Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, cool. I'm trying to do it today without using the earbud doodads because I'm just overusing those. So hopefully my voice sounds okay in this way. If not, I could always go back to using those buds. Okay, let's pull this up. Good morning. Good morning. Everyone's writing good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I'm back in Michigan. I know you guys you guys got a little snow, right? Did you guys get a little bit of snow? I heard that you might have. Yeah, someone wrote a lot. Yes. Oh my God, 2 feet of it. Yeah. Andrew wrote, what's in the tank behind you? Just plants, a lot of different little plants. Plants you can commonly find at even stores like Home Depot or Lowe's or things like that. Yeah, so like there's a lot. I have like 35 houseplants total, I think, last I checked. It's great. I could actually teach you guys how to make a terrarium like this because what's cool about that is, number one, you don't have to water it that often. It kind of does its own thing. And up. Yep, don't forget to mute, please. Yeah, so I can actually teach you guys how to make them. I have other little terrariums around as well that I never water. I water them like once a year. Okay, I don't understand. Like I put speaker view on my side here because I'm recording this and it looks like it's not doing what I want it to do, but that's okay. Let's just jump into it. Why not? We're here. Let's do it. Okay, slideshow. Great. Okay, so now get that back here. Sorry, I'm trying to do the thing I did last time. Okay, that's good. And oh, why does it do that? So annoying. All right, here. All right, well, we'll just have to deal with it that way. That's fine, whatever. Because I'm not going to spend time worrying about this today. All right, well, whatever. Okay, forget it. So yeah, we're gonna, before we just jump on ahead and go nuts in the rest of the bryophytes, we're gonna regroup a little bit and kind of like backtrack just a little bit because I felt a little bit rushed at the end of last class. And I don't want to feel rushed. I don't want you guys to feel rushed. So the last class we began talking about the bryophytes, right? And bryophytes included the different non-vascular plants, including the mosses, the liverworts, and the hornworts. And we started talking about the mosses. That's where we began. And we went through some of their characteristics, and then we started kind of getting into their, we did kind of go quickly through their life cycle, but just to kind of refresh where we left off. So here, remember, there's 2 types of mosses that we talk about in this class. There's the true mosses, right? The true mosses, and then the peat mosses. And so when we had our class last time, we talked about these true mosses. And so here you have a male and a female gametophyte plant, right? And on top of the male and gametophyte plants is where you're going to find the sex organs. So just always, when you think of gametophyte plant, just know you always have your sex organs there, right? That's where they are. They're on the gametophyte plant. And in the case of the true mosses, they're at the tippy top, right? So the male gametophyte plant sex organs are going to be those Antheridia, and the female gametophyte plant sex organs are going to be the Archegonia, right? Antheridia makes a sperm that swims. Archegonia houses or holds an egg that waits for the sperm, right? And so eventually the sperm, when a raindrop drops on top of the male gametophyte plant or some other water source, it's going to splash right? Splash, and that's going to let the sperm go in the water and swim, swim, swim. The water will land on top of the female gametophyte plant, and then the sperm can swim, swim, swim down to the egg and fertilize the egg. So haploid sperm, haploid egg fuse together, and then you already know what's going to happen then is the is the diploid zygote, right? That's what's going to happen. But here we saw this last time, but just as a refresh, this is what the Archegonia look like in real life under the microscope slide. And I think I drew it last time, but I'll do it again just to get us up to speed, right? So like this is one egg in here. This is one egg in here. All of these Archegonia have an egg. You can nicely see the neck cells right there leading to the egg. There's another neck cell leading down to another egg. And that's where the sperm will swim down. Okay. And then this likewise is what the male gametophyte sex organs, the Antheridia, look like. And just, I noticed I didn't say this last time. One nice thing about Antheridia in all the plants we're going to look at, like every plant that we look at is going to have at some point a male sex organ, meaning every species. And what's nice about the male sex organs, the Antheridia, is that they always kind of look the same. The tissue looks the same, kind of doesn't really matter what plant you're in. So you see this, trying my best here to draw. You see these things, so each of these things, I'm trying my best, sorry, trying my best here. Each of these things, and the ones next to it too, are each one Antheridium, right? Or all of them together, Antheridia. And you see that kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like kind of speckly, like kind of polka dotty look to it. Well, that speckly kind of polka dotty look to it is how Antheridia always look under the microscope, always. It's kind of nice that it does that because sometimes you're looking at a plant maybe for the first time or something under a microscope and you're trying to figure out like, what is what, where am I? And if it happens to have Antheridia on it, it's kind of convenient because it's like, oh yeah, look, there's Antheridia. So just make a note of that because when you go forward and learning the other, as we go forward in the plant kingdom, we're going to encounter Antheridia a lot of times. And just know it always kind of looks like that. There's this big scary word here that we talked about last time, but just as a refresh, okay, yeah, yellow's not a good choice to use on that backdrop. Let's use this color. Okay, you see this word spermatogenous, right? Spermatogenous just means the cells, it's the cells that are going to be the genus, origin, or you can think of it, they're going to generate sperm. Spermatogenous, cells that are going to generate sperm or the origin of sperm. When we were in the sporangia, we also saw this word sporogenous, right? The origin of spores or cells that generate spores. Right? Okay. Next. All right, let's see, this is why this thing is not good. I gotta move this thing. So we saw in the previous slide, remember this is just kind of a refresh, where the sperm was able to get to the top of an archegonium and then via water swim down, meet the egg. When that happens, haploid sperm, haploid egg, fertilization occurs. 2N zygote is the result. And here, I didn't drink any coffee before class, so I'm trying to make up for it now. Here we see that 2N zygote, right? The result of fertilization. And it's located, as we talked about last time, still inside of an archegonium because that's where the egg was. Egg stays, sperm swims, right? Now the 2N zygote is growing via mitosis and cytokinesis into an embryo, and then it's going to continue to grow via mitosis and cytokinesis to become that young sporophyte plant. Notice, still attached to the female gametophyte plant, right? still attached to the female gametophyte plant. In this slide, all that cream colored stuff represents the female gametophyte plant. Okay, good. Then eventually the sporophyte plant is going to grow and become a mature sporophyte. Eventually that mature sporophyte will have on it sporangia, right, which make spores. And they make spores using their sporogenous tissue, right, or tissue composed of cells that generate spores, sporogenous. And then via meiosis, those 2N sporogenous cells or spore mother cells are going to use meiosis and create spores. And then eventually the spores will get released. Right? How do they get released? This is kind of where I think we left off last time. How do they get released? Well, in the true mosses, it's usually the top of the sporangium usually has what's called an operculum and an annulus. An operculum is this lid. Here's the operculum, this whole thing. And the annulus is like the kind of like the seal of the lid. So if you ever like buy something at the grocery store and it's like, don't eat this if the seal's been broken. Ah. So like that's how you can kind of think of the annulus. The annulus is this seal that holds the operculum on top of this sporangium. Eventually the annulus will rupture and the operculum can fall off. And when that happens in the true mosses, again, we're true mosses here, one of which is polytrichum, right? A lot of those have what's called peristome teeth, and they're basically the operculum falls off and they're like these little projections, like these little, they're almost like hairy like leaves. They're not leaves, but like they're almost like hairy like things. And so the operculum falls off and now those peristome teeth are exposed to the air. And what happens is that allows them to kind of move and spread out because they're drying out. So it says here they're sensitive to changes in humidity. And then as they kind of dry out, it kind of like helps flick the spores away and get them out to be brought along on the air. So this is what a picture, this is under a microscope of the top of some sporangia or the capsule. And it shows you the operculum has already fallen off. And these kind of tongue-like looking things are those peristome teeth. And those little dots on the tongue-like looking things are the spores. Here's another picture of that. And so the spores are dispersed by wind. And it says dispersed worldwide via wind, because that's kind of a cool thing about these plants. The spores are so super small that they really can travel great distances. I mean, this is like a piece of dust. You can think of it as like pieces of dust. So if you got a strong wind going, you can really disperse very long distances, which is one of the reasons we talked about in class a couple times ago about how these are plants that show up in the very beginning at when you have a newly exposed habitat, like let's say an island that just showed up because of a volcanic activity underwater. So that's why these could like show up first, because the spores can travel across the ocean in the wind and then maybe land on that new island. And I think we watched this, but let's just see if this works, because I think we have a few others today. Yes. Whoa, okay. You guys can't see it. I know. Hold on. I always forget about that. Or can you? Can you guys see the video? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, hold on. It's weird how it does that. Okay, can you see it now? Looks like I haven't played it yet, but yeah, you guys can see it. Okay, cool. Great. All right, so let's just play this real quick. So you can see, it's kind of loud. So that's the top of a sporangium, and those like kind of hair-likey things that are opening and closing, those are those peristome teeth that are reacting to changes in humidity and helping to release the spores. Oh, okay. All right, go back to this. Cool. All right, so that's kind of where we left off last time, I think, give or take. So now we're going to talk about the peat mosses. So in terms of alternation of generations, the peat mosses have basically the same players as the true mosses. So all those steps that we just went through the last time we had lecture, and then again a little bit today, you know, male and female gametophyte plant, the location of the sex organs on the gametophyte plant, etc. All that's basically the same for the peat mosses. Oh, and remember in the true mosses, we had Polytrichum and Nium. Those are the genera that we focused on in the true mosses. In the peat mosses, there's only one genus for all peat mosses. So all peat mosses are in the genus Sphagnum. Sphagnum is how you say that. This has a lot of blah, 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 but okay, the point is basically that in the true mosses, when the gametophyte plant starts to grow, it's kind of like thready. And in the peat mosses, when the gametophyte starts to grow, it has what's called a phallus shape. Phallus is a word we'll see in the liverworts and the hornworts as well. The phallus just means flat green thing in the plant world, flat green thing. So you see here in B, it almost kind of looks like something you'd see growing at like the seashore, like a flat green thing, as versus like a thready green thing. Yeah, don't worry too much about that. All right, flat green thing. But we'll see the word phallus. If something has a phallus shape, you can call it phalloid. But we'll see this word phallus again in the liverworts and the hornworts as well. All right. What do I care that you know about here? Yeah, okay. So the point of this slide is just saying that in the peat mosses, the gametophyte plant's a little more fancy. It's a little more fancy than in the true mosses. In the true mosses, you had like stem-like parts and leaf-like parts. Peat mosses are a little more fancy, and so they have other things, like they kind of have, now we get to do branches, right? Like, so there's a little bit more fanciness going on. You don't need to know like divergent branches, pendant branches. You don't need to know that. Just know that it's a little bit more complex looking than a true moss. Oh, this is important though. So the other thing about the peat mosses is that their leaves, remember I'm doing this because when we're still talking about the non-vascular plants, which don't have vasculature. So technically, if it doesn't have xylem and phloem, we can't really call it a leaf, but it looks like a leaf, so we say leaves. But in the peat mosses, the leaves have more complexity to them. So they have these two types of cells. I don't know if you can hear that. It's like a super loud bird outside the window. They have these more complex cells, and what they do is they help with water storage, and they help with making food via photosynthesis. So they're called hyaline cells, and then there's these smaller kind of green chlorophyllus, don't worry about that word, photosynthetic cells. So in this slide, These open spaces, like these big kind of, they almost look empty. Those are the hyaline cells. And then obviously these green things all through here, ooh, that's pretty good, are those photosynthetic cells. So the leaves are just a little bit more advanced, more complex. Oh yeah, and this is another little thing about these is that, remember when we talked about the true mosses, the parts of the sporophyte plant were a foot, a seta, which is like a stalk, and then a capsule, aka sporangium, right? So foot, seta, capsule. That's what we had in the true mosses. In the peat mosses, we don't have a seta anymore, because the thing that actually elevates the sporangium off of the gametophyte plant is actually part of the gametophyte plant. So we'll see this on the next slide, but you see here pseudopodium. So in the peat mosses, you have a pseudopodium instead of a seta, right? No seta in the peat mosses. Yes, pseudopodium, which is technically part of the gametophyte plant. It'll make more sense if we look at it on a picture, right? Pseudopodium part of the gametophyte plant, right? Make a note of that. Pseudopodium is another like why word, like too long. But if you break it apart, as we always will in this class, pseudo means false, like it always makes me think of like Sue's Studio, but that's just like aging myself. Yeah, pseudo means false, like, oh yeah, it's like my pseudo friend, like, ooh, I don't know if I want to meet that person. But false. And then podium comes from podos, which means foot. So it kind of means false foot. So remember, the parts of the sporophyte plant in the true mosses were foot, seta, capsule. Parts of the sporophyte plant in the, hold on, it's making noise. Parts of the sporophyte plant in the peat mosses is foot and capsule. Foot and capsule, and then pseudopodium is part of the gametophyte plant. This will make more sense in a picture. Always makes more sense in a picture than me just talking about it. So, oh, I got a chat box. Oh yeah, Beatrice. Yeah, I know, Susu Studio, right? Okay, so here, look. Oh, go back. No, go back. Okay, right. What we're looking at here is this is the top of a peat moss gametophyte plant with sporophyte plant emerging. So I'll do my best here to draw. So see all this green fluffy gametophyte plant, right? Green fluffy in the moss is gametophyte plant. Coming off of this gametophyte plant is the sporophyte plant, because remember, in the mosses, the sporophyte plant is never independent and always dependent on the gametophyte plant, right? So it's always going to be attached to the gametophyte plant. And here we see it. So really, we would think this whole thing coming off is actually the sporophyte plant, but in actuality, the only part of the sporophyte plant, this is it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. There's a foot right into here. And then there's a capsule. Ooh, I'm not good at this drawing thing. And that's it. That's the whole sporophyte plant. That little structure underneath it, that stalk-like thing that looks like a theta, is actually a pseudopodium. So it's part of the gametophyte plant that elevates the sporophyte plant off of it. So yeah, that's just the thing to know that's different. Another difference is that the peat mosses don't have those peristome teeth, those like things that open via humidity to release the spores. They don't have that anymore. Instead, they explode. Instead, they just explode out. So here, I'm gonna have to share this here. Pause. Yeah, pause it. Okay. Make it big. And then share this. Sphagnum, yes. Okay, You guys will see this now. All right, so this is the top. This is the capsule of a sphagnum sporophyte plant. And you see here, yeah. So I don't know if you can see that here. Let's do it one more time. Yeah, so instead of the little slow peristome teeth thing, where they just kind of open up gently and release these spores into the wind, now in the peat moss is literally like an explosion of spores. So you don't need peristome teeth if you have this kind of physics going on. So that's another difference. Yeah, exploding sporangia. All right. Peat mosses are important to us in that we use them for fuel, believe it or not. So there's these peat bogs where pretty much the only thing grows there is peat moss. And we harvest that peat moss and use it for different things, including fuel. We also use it as a soil conditioner, right, in horticulture and agricultural practices. We even use it for medical applications, or at least we used to. We probably use other things these days, but there were times in our history where people would use, so let's say you were in these areas where there's a peat bogs and you were injured and had some wound, you can actually take peat moss or sphagnum moss and, well, peat, which sphagnum moss turns into peat, and put it on the wound, and it would help you not have it. Oh, and somebody here, Andrew, says it's also used in whiskey to add flavor. Did not know that. Interesting. Good job. Yeah, so if you're ever injured in a peat bog, you can grab some peat and just like put it on your injury, and it'll help you not get infected. So that's what we use it for in terms of making money, but also there's some interesting history about like this whole peat moss thing. So you might not know this, but around 20,000 years ago, well, definitely where I am right now in Michigan, here, just in case you don't know where I am, this is a good opportunity to show you. So you guys are, where's New Jersey? Oh, it's hard to see on this map, but okay, you guys are like over here. And then I am right now, okay, come on, draw, like right over here, ish. So 20,000 years ago, where you guys are right now and where I am right now in Michigan was actually covered in glaciers. And the thing about glaciers is they're like this big, heavy ice sheet, right? So it's like, if you're a plant, it's not super easy to grow if you're just covered in this massive ice sheet. In fact, as the glacier moves, it kind of like strips the land of any existing vegetation. And then when it leaves, it's just kind of like, you know, scraped land, you know, there's like nothing there. And so what happened though, eventually those glaciers melted, the ones that were in the northern part of our region. And what happened is that exposed, so it scraped all the stuff off of the land except for the bedrock, right? Like the hard rock right there. And that rock happened to be granite, and granite happens to be acidic. So when water was added to it via rain, it made these kind of like very acidic bogs and lakes, or ponds and lakes, super acidic water. And nothing could really grow there. It was just like, you know, very acidic water. But sphagnum moss can grow there and did grow there. And so you would have these like massive tracts of land, like lots and lots and lots of miles of just sphagnum moss ponds and lakes. And eventually that would die, and it would kind of like be like sphagnum moss, dead, like layers and layers and layers of it, smush, smush, smush over time. And what that happens, it would decay very slowly, again, because of that acidic environment. But eventually you get peat. The result is peat. So in this bottom picture here, you see this man harvesting peat from these peat bogs. It almost looks like giant brownies or something, like these big chunks. And that's the peat, and that's the peat. So we use that for those purposes. We still harvest it today, although not a sustainable, typically not a very sustainable type of a harvest, right? We have to think of alternatives to using peat. Okay, here's a nice picture of moss, particularly sphagnum moss. This is probably in Connecticut or Rhode Island. Okay, and that is the end of the mosses. So what I'm gonna do now, it's only 10:30, so that's good. Screen sharing can stop. Yep, okay, good. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start the next part, which is the mosses, the liverworts, and the hornworts. Oh yay, and I finally figured that out, good. Let's see here. And we'll share this. And I don't know if we're gonna get through this whole thing today, and that's okay. We're doing good on time because I decided to have us do the first lab this coming Friday instead of last Friday. So we're doing good on time. We don't have to feel rushed. So that was the mosses. Now we will talk about the other bryophytes, which is the liverworts and the hornworts. Oh, just a reminder, so assignment 1 was due before class began today. So hopefully you did that assignment. If you did not submit that assignment, email me by today to be able to get some points towards it. And just a reminder to please turn your assignments in on time. They're not meant to be hard. They're meant to help you learn the material in pieces as versus trying to cram for an exam. And they're meant to help offset your exam grades so that it's not just exams. It also lets me know how you guys are doing with the material. So please do them. Okay, yeah, we did that. Yep, that's what we're gonna do. Okay. I always like to get oriented, like where am I in the plant kingdom? And so we're still in these bryophytes or non-vascular plants. We already covered the mosses, and so now we're gonna go into those liverworts and those hornworts. We saw this cartoon a couple lectures ago. Although now, if we want to get fancy, now since we covered the moss already, we can add a little bit to this drawing, right? So we know now, right, that this green fluffy is Gametophyte plant, and we know now that these things coming out are the Sporophyte plants, right? And if this was a true moss, which it looks like it is, yes, we could say this is the sporangium, this is the seta coming out, there's a foot down here somewhere. And if it's a true moss, there would be peristome teeth in there, right? So this is kind of how you can start to build when you're going through these things. There's a lot of repetition in this class, even though there's a lot of material. Question in the chat box. How can you tell this looks more like a true moss? Good question. It has to do with the sporophyte plant, because remember, the peat mosses don't have a seta. So here, the coloration of this cartoon, the sporophyte plant's all kind of brown. So I could easily see a capsule up here, brown capsule, and it's attached to a brown stalk-like thing. So based on that, I know that the stalk-like thing is part of this, the stalk-like thing and the capsule-like thing, since they're both the same color in this drawing, are both part of the sporophyte plant. And I know that in the peat mosses, there is no stalk-like thing on the sporophyte plant. Instead, in the peat mosses, the sporophyte plant is just a capsule. Here's a capsule and a little foot. And the sporophyte plant in the peat mosses is surrounded by a stalk-like thing that is actually part of the Gametophyte plant called a Pseudopodium. So that's how. Good question, though. Good question. All right. So liverworts and hornworts. We'll start with the liverworts because they're just like, I don't know, kind of more cute in my opinion. So liverwort is called a liverwort because whoever first described it thought it looked like a liver, like somebody's liver. They're like, look at this liver plant. The reason they thought it looked like somebody's liver is because it has, again, this thallus shape, right? So remember, when you see thallus, you just think flat green thing, or a thallus. And then wort means plant. So liver-shaped plant, okay. They didn't have cable back then, guys, so yeah. These liverworts, so remember, we sometimes will discuss the phylum of these plants, right? So the mosses, both the true mosses and the peat mosses, were in the phylum Bryophyta. That's what they were in. Liverworts are in the phylum Marcantio Phyta. That's definitely a mouthful, I won't lie. Marcantio Phyta. But one thing we already learned is that if you see this phyta, you know for sure you're always talking about a phylum. So Marcantio Phyta is the liverworts. And there you go. There's pictures of them there. So you see all these like flat green things. Kind of looks like green ribbons or even like green tongues if you want. Those are the liverworts. I will say though, this slide also shows you some sphagnum moss. So I'll draw the liverworts. So the liverworts are surrounding, I guess, purple. It's hard to tell what color will be good here. All this green stuff, all this green flat stuff is the liverworts. All this green ribbony stuff, flat ribbony stuff. But then those little pom-pom doodads, those little green pom-pom green fluffies, those are actually sphagnum moss that we just covered. Just so you're not confused. A lot of times in nature, liverworts, hornworts, and mosses grow together. So if you're ever trying to like get a picture of one of them, oftentimes you end up getting a picture of all three of them. So sorry about that. I didn't feel like ripping these guys out to for the purposes of a good picture. Okay, liverworts. What do we care about liverworts? So liverworts are old in evolutionary time, just like mosses. They don't have any vasculature because that's they're some of the first plants that emerged and were able to live on land. It's a non-vascular plant, so we know gametophyte generation is dominant, like all non-vascular plants. And there's two types of liverwort plants. There's phalloid or phallus-shaped liverwort plants, and then there's leafy-looking liverwort plants that almost kind of look like a moss, and we're not going to talk about those in this class. We'll only focus on the phalloid ones or the flat green ones. And the flat green ones or the phalloid ones are also the most common. About 1,600 species. I think it's closer to 1,800 nowadays. Oh, this is just a recall from the very first lecture. See, when you see an italicized or an underlined word followed by SP, it refers to all the species in that genus. So this is something that will help you in lab. So for example, look, phylum Marcantio Phyta, right? The liverwort phylum. In the phylum, there are different species, and each of those species is in a genus, right? When we talk about many of those genuses, we don't say genuses, we say genera. Here's two genera, but let's talk about this genus. So this here, this is what the bottom thing is saying. See, Marcantia sp. All this says is all of the species in the genus Marcantia. I just mentioned that because in labs, a lot of times it'll say something SP, something else SP, and I don't want you guys to be like, what is this SP thing? It just means all the species in that genus. Okay. Here you go. So on the left is the example of a thalloid or thallus-shaped or liver-shaped liverwort. Flat and green, right? Not too exciting. Flat and green, cute, super cute, but not too exciting. And then on the right, at least I think it's right for you guys. It's kind of hard for me to tell if things are reversed there or not, whatever, is the leafy-like looking ones. And it looks more like a moss, and we're not going to talk about those in this class. Where do they live? Where do liverworts live? Well, in a place that has water at some point, but they do typically live where it's moist a lot of the time. So tropical, temperate environments, like we described when we talked about bryophytes in general or non-vascular plants in general. The liverworts are early successional so that it can grow on bare soil, like not great soil or rock, right? Early successional. A lot of species of liverwort are what are called epiphytes, which means they grow on other plants, for example, trees. Here's another picture of that. And there's a few species of liverwort that are still aquatic, meaning they live either completely submerged in water or floating on the water. So if any of you guys have ever had kept a freshwater fish tank and had real plants growing in it, sometimes you can purchase a lot of the plants, not a lot, but some of the plants they sell to use in freshwater fish tanks are actually liverworts. Here's some of the, okay, this is showing you the ones, these are examples of ones that float, and these are examples of one that lives submerged under the water. But guess what? Believe it or not, some species even live in urban environments. For example, Newark, New Jersey. So I took this picture right by the law school on campus. And this was the first time I ever saw liverworts in nature, as it were. Like I had seen them in the lab, I had seen them at botanical gardens, but I had never seen them like walking around like, oh, look, there's a liverwort. It was the first time I ever did. And what do you know? It was in Newark, New Jersey, right by the law school on campus. So that's pretty cool. So you can actually see them. You can see them around. They're around. They're not just in like some tropical rainforest. They're around. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, I was very excited that day, as you can imagine. What do liverworts look like? Okay, gametophyte, small. They're small green flat things, right? Small green flat things. Look, there's a dime for comparison. Tiny little things. They are not vascular, right? They're non-vascular plants. So they don't have roots, they don't have stems, they don't have leaves, and because they don't have vascular tissue. That's that. Flat ones and leafy ones, but leafy ones we don't care about for this class. All this slide is saying is that they have very simple growth. They're very simple plants, guys. These are, you know, relatively evolutionarily speaking, they're more simple. Here's what I mean by simple. So like it says growth by apical meristematic cells. Don't worry about that meristematic right now. But the point is that there's places on a plant where mitosis can occur in order to grow longer. And in the mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, they have this real simple type growth body pattern where, for example, let's say there was a a cell here that can undergo mitosis, and it did, and it basically grew. Remember, the result is 2 whatever. The point is, look at this very simple pattern of just like branching, right? Like very, very simple. It's not like a tree or something like that. It's just like grow, split, grow, split, grow, split. Not too fancy. Look here. Grow, split, right? Here's another one. Grow, split. That grow, split kind of a growth pattern we call equal dichotomy. It's like grow, mitosis occurs, split, and then each of those points will grow, split. It's just simple. It's just a simple kind of growth pattern. As we learn more about other plants, you'll see there's a lot more complex type of growth. Rhizoids we talked about in the mosses already. They look kind of like roots. They look kind of like hairs, but they're basically these thread-like things that help attach the gametophyte to whatever it's on. So a rock, for example. Even though they look like a root, they're not a root, right? They're not very good at absorbing water. They're just to hold it down. And so it can't blow, or so it doesn't float away. This is something you should make a note of. So we talked about the gametophyte plants of the mosses, right? The true mosses and the peat mosses. And, you know, they look green and fluffy, and they kind of, you know, have stems and leaves as it were. They have like some specialized tissues, but not really that much, like a little bit, but not really. When you get to the liverworts, though, specifically these thalloid or flat liverworts, you can kind of say that the gametophytes are a little bit more complex in that they have specialized layers that perform different tasks. So specialized layers of cells. What do I mean by that? Well, the top of the liverwort gametophyte plant has a whole layer that's just kind of dedicated to photosynthesis and making food. Another way that it's more complex is they have improved gas exchange because now they have pores. So just know you don't really see pores on this drawing, but just know that on the top surface of the liverwort, you'll have pores. So more complex gametophyte plant, a layer that does photosynthesis. There's pores or holes that help with gas exchange. And then there's another layer on the bottom that helps store the food in the form of starch. So a little bit more complex than the mosses. A little bit more complex. Here you go, right? Oh, we skipped that. Here you go. This was a drawing, right? Cartoon. This is real under the microscope. So now we can see those more complex things a little bit easier. So for example, here we go, this kind of green, see this green layer I'm trying to draw? That's that photosynthetic layer dedicated to making food. See this other layer underneath it, it's a little less dense and you can see some kind of purpley dots. That's the area that stores the food in the form of starch, which are those purpley dots. And then check out this giant pore. What? Look at this thing. So the reason why that's cool is that because it really does help with gas exchange. In the mosses, any type of gas exchange had to occur solely through like diffusion purposes. That's still happening here, but now you have almost like, it's like having an open window. Like, so the air, carbon dioxide can flow right in and oxygen can flow right out. So it's a little bit better at gas exchange than the mosses. Dorsal just means, this is good if you're going to go to medical school. Dorsal just means top. top surface. So what I think of is like on a shark, it has like a dorsal fin. So that's on it's on its back, or it's well, when it's swimming, that's its top, right? So dorsal just means top. Good to know these terms if you're gonna be going on in the sciences. Okay, here's another picture of the pores. One thing to note, just looking at the time here, one thing to note is that the pores are not regulated. They're literally like an open window that doesn't have glass. Like you can't ever, you're not gonna close the pore. The pore is just there, it's just open. So there is no regulation in terms of air that goes in, air that goes out. The reason I'm pointing that out is because later there will be regulation in other plants, but in the liverworts, not yet. Okay, so that kind of tells you a little bit about the complexity of the liverwort gametophyte plant. Since it's a gametophyte plant, we know it has organs that make gametes, egg, and sperm. Where are those organs located? They're on the top, right? So remember I said like a dorsal fin on a shark. That's where the sex organs are going to be located. And in the case of the liverworts, we have a new structure that we have to learn. And it's going to look long, but just know it's we can pull it apart to make it sense. And also it only occurs in the liverworts. So yeah, we have to know it for the liverworts, but then we don't have to know it ever again for any other plants. So there's special structures that elevate the sex organs. Here they are. Here they are. So on the top, you have a male gametophyte plant. On the bottom, you have a female gametophyte plant. Before you get worried about this special structure, think about it like this. Male gametophyte plant. It's a gametophyte plant. It has to have sex organs. It's a male gametophyte plant. It has to make sperm. What organ makes sperm? Antheridia, right? On a female gametophyte plant, it's a gametophyte plant. It has to make gametes. It's female, so it has to make an egg, right? What organ makes eggs? Archegonia. So we already know all that. We already know all that from the mosses. But now we have a new structure, and it's a structure that organizes these sex organs. So here's our male gametophyte plant on the top. The male gametophyte plant is going to have this thing called an antheridiophore. And the antheridiophore is where all of the antheridia are going to be located. So here you see here antheridiophore, it's actually this whole thing. And the antheridia are just going to be all located right on this doodad up here. The female gametophyte plant is going to have a structure that holds or bears all of the Archegonia. We call that an Archegoniophore. So here is the whole thing. Here is an Archegoniophore. Don't worry about Sporophytes. And then this is where all of the Archegonia are going to be located up there. Okay. Let's look at them on real plants. Oh, I did it for you here. Yeah, so that's just to show you that this is it. The circle is holding the whole Antheridiophore, and the circle below is holding the whole Archegoniophore. And because I like to give you guys this, 4 means, I think we've come across that before, but before. Sorry, I think we've come across that before, but it just means the bearer of, okay? Sorry, before, that's so funny, okay, yeah. Sorry, coffee's starting to kick in, guys, can you tell? Okay, so here, this is, right, what is this? Okay, so remember I said it was at the tippy top, right? Tippy top. Right, so like up here, that's where the Antheridia are going to be. Up here, that's where the Archegonia are going to be. This next slide shows it, shows the top. Here you go. So this is not a great slide, but just trust me. So this is the top. The top one is showing the top of an Antheridia 4. The bottom one is showing you the top of an Archegonia. Sorry. The top one is showing you the top. You know what? Okay, we're just okay. The one on the top is showing you the Archegonia 4, the top of it. So it's showing you where all the Archegonia are. And the one on the bottom is showing you the top of an Antheridia 4, or where all the Antheridia are located. And the reason why I include this not great slide is there's one thing to keep in mind. So on the top of the Antheridia 4, the Antheridium are going to all be on the top of that, on the dorsal side of that. And that has to do with because they need to be exposed to rain. So like if this is like an Antheridia 4, all the Antheridia are going to be on top because they need to be facing where the rain is, Whereas on the Archegonia 4, the Archegonia are going to be underneath. So you can think of as like the Archegonia 4, it's almost like they're protected. So like the Archegonia are underneath and protected. Antheridia 4, the Antheridia are on top, exposed to the rain. I don't know why that slide tripped me up. Okay. We're almost done here. Here's what they look like in real. So this is a bunch of Antheridiophores. Each of these, here's one, here's another one, here's another one. These are the Antheridiophores. And if we were to zoom in and look at the top of one of these, this would be all Antheridia, all on top, right? All on top. That's what Antheridiophores look like. And here is them again. This is just to show you that the Antheridia are all on the top, as I said. Remember that I said earlier in this lecture that what's nice about the Antheridia, the male sex organs, is that they always kind of look like the same. It's just kind of this homogeneous tissue. There's not like a lot of different things. It's just kind of like this one type of tissue, and that's the sperm producing or sperm generating tissue. So this is one, it should say Antheridium because it's only one of them. Here's all the Antheridia on top of this Antheridiophore. Whoa, sorry. Okay. Here's the Archegoniaphores. So notice the Antheridiophores, they're like kind of flat. Like the Antheridiophores kind of look almost like a lily pad, something like that. Whereas the Archegoniaphores almost look like little palm trees. Yeah, they almost look like little palm trees. So here's Antheridio. Sorry, I think I keep doing that. Here is Archegoniaphores on the left. In the middle, this is one Archegoniophore cross section. And the reason we have this is just to show you. So here is one Archegoniophore. We're going to cut it in half to do a cross section. That's what we have here, just so you can see like this little arm. See this little arm and this little arm? That's like this and this. Underneath the leaves of the like palm tree thing of the Archegoniophore, that's where you'll find the Archegonia. So all of these here are the female sex organs. If we were to like zoom in even closer on those, you'd see one Archegonium. That's this, it's upside down with an egg inside. Okay. Oops. Clear. All right. How are we doing on time? I think, yeah, we're almost done here. Do I want to do this now? Yeah, okay. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go through alternation of generations of the liverwort, and then we'll stop for the day, and that'll be it. Okay, so we're going to do this one cycle of alternation of generations in the liverworts, and then we'll stop. Okay, so we're talking about the liverworts, right? Or the phylum Marcantio Phyta, right? That's what we're talking about. And this is alternation of generations. This slide shows you the entire thing. So this is like the overview. This would be a good slide to have just like as a reference slide, because this is just an overview slide. Has every single part. But we can go through it a little by little. So some of this is going to sound familiar, and then some of it's going to sound a little, just a little tweaked, but it's basically the moss thing. It's basically what we already covered in the mosses. All right, you have a spore. Let's change colors here. Okay, you have a spore. Here's a spore. Here's a spore. Spore is going to grow via mitosis and cytokinesis into gametophyte plant, right? Here is a male gametophyte plant. Here is the female gametophyte plant. On the male gametophyte plant, we know it's a gametophyte plant, so it has to make gametes. It's male, so it has to make sperm. So therefore, it has to have an organ that makes sperm. And that organ is called an antheridium, or plural antheridia. And in the case of the liverworts, all of those organs are going to be on structures called Antheridia 4. For the female gametophyte plant, we know it's gametophyte. We know it has to make gametes. It's female, so we know it has to make an egg. Eggs are made in the female sex organs, or the Archegonia. And on the liverworts, all of the Archegonia will be on structures called Archegonia 4. So back to that male gametophyte plant. Look what's happening, you know? Drop top on top, raindrop, drop top on top of the Antheridia 4. And that's where all of the Antheridia are located that are now full of sperm. And so the raindrop is going to drop on top and splash sperm onto the top of this Archegonia 4. And when, so here, look, here it goes. Look at this, look at that. Splash, right? Splashing onto the top of that Archegonia 4. Here's one of the arms of this palm tree looking, this is the stalk. So like here's, you can think of the Archegonia 4 as like this. Remember I said it looks kind of like a palm tree? We only see one of the little arms in this cross section. Okay. So the raindrop dropped and it splashed the sperm via water to the top of this Archegonia 4. And then once the water lands there, here's a sperm. The sperm is going to swim, and it's like, it's kind of curly. It's weird. But it's going to swim in kind of a spiral, like in the water, and then eventually, boop, meet an Archegonia. Because remember, the Archegonia are all on the bottom of the Archegonia 4, whereas the Antheridia are all on top of the Antheridia 4. So yeah, sperm is going to swim in the water, boom, meets an egg in an Archegonia. Okay. So we know what happens next. We know what happens next. Sperm, haploid egg, fuse via fertilization for your 2N zygote. So here's this is just what I showed on the previous, where I was trying to draw. But like here, you can see the little sperms. They're like swimming. Look, here they are. Here's one. Swim, and eventually meets the egg. Fertilization, 2N zygote. 2N zygote is going to grow via mitosis, cytokinesis into embryo. which is going to continue to grow. But notice the color change, right? We're in a green. Once it's green, we know we're in 2N, right? Because we're sporophyte already. And it's going to grow via mitosis and cytokinesis. And then eventually you'll end up with your sporophyte plant. And the sporophyte plant in the liverworts has some parts that we're already familiar with in terms of words. Has a foot, has a seta, and it has a sporangium, right? So this whole thing here, sporophyte plant. Notice it hangs upside down like a bat. That's because the Archegonia hangs upside down too, off of the arms of the Archegonia 4. Okay, I think that might be, let's see real quick. Yeah, okay. So there's the sporophyte plant of the liverwort. Sporophyte plant, we should already think in our head, it's going to make spores, right? Sporophyte plant makes spores. So here's that sporophyte plant again. There's going to be 2N cells inside of this 2N sporophyte plant. Inside of this 2N sporangium. Meiosis is going to occur, and then ultimately you end up with spores. This is showing you those Archegonia 4s again. This is the tops of them. Sorry, I know that probably wasn't helpful. But the point is, here's the sporophyte plants. They're hanging upside down. There they are. And they're going to make spores. And so spores will leave. And that's where we began and when we did this alternation of generations here. Okay. Oops. Clear. The only other thing I want to just point out, I think, is this, is these things called elators. We'll kind of refresh on this next time, but just know, similar to those peristome teeth that we saw in the liverworts, there's these little snake-looking cells that are called elators, and they kind of do the same thing. They like just kind of wiggle when humidity changes. Don't worry about that right now. That's just showing you spores. Here you go, elators. Don't worry about this too much, but they kind of like wiggle when the humidity changes. You see wet elator, dry elator, just kind of wiggle around. And that helps the spores come out. Don't worry about this. Here's what I wanted to get to, and this is where we're going to end it for today. So we've covered two members of the bryophytes, or the non-vascular plants. We've covered the mosses, and we've covered the liverworts, or Bryophyta versus Marcantio Phyta. And I just wanted to show you guys here. This is the thing I was saying before. So on the right, we have this. Keep in mind, I'm only going to draw on the sporophyte plants, right? Because that's what we're doing here, is we're comparing sporophyte plants. So on the right, we have the moss, in this case, the true moss. Here's the foot. Here's the seta. Here is the capsule, or the sporangium. And it's growing upwards from the Gametophyte plant. But remember, in the liverworts, we have these new special structures called Antheridia Archegonia 4s that look like palm trees, where the Archegonia are. The Archegonia are hanging upside down. So likewise, once the egg is fertilized, the sporophyte is also going to hang upside down. So here you go. The foot. So same parts. Foot of the sporophyte plant, a much shorter seta, and then a capsule, aka sporangium. Why a much shorter seta? Because it's growing upside down. So if it had a long seta, it'd be like, whoa, and run right into the ground, right? So it has to be a shorter seta. Okay. We're going to leave it at that for today. And we will pick up with the hornworts next time. You guys don't have anything due for next class. So that's good. And yeah. If you guys have any questions, you can feel free to ask them here now, or send me an email. I'm happy to get back to you. Some of you have sent me emails about the documentary assignment. I hope you guys liked the documentary. If I haven't written back to you yet, I will get back to you today. So with that, I'll say goodbye and have a great rest of your day. Unless anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those now.
Have a good day, Professor.
You too. Thank you.
I have a question, Professor.
Sure.
It's kind of unrelated though.
Okay, who's talking?
Andrew?
Okay. Hi, Andrew.
So
What's your question, hun?
So in the documentary we saw a lot about how like plants of the same species that are close to each other could have like a great effect on how the other one grows and things like that. So I was wondering if that works with different species, because I have these two plants in my house. They're different species, but they're similar. And one of them, like a branch of it was leaning on the other one, and it started to like change and look like the one it was leaning on. Is that like a coincidence, or could it be like a reason behind that?
Okay, so first of all, send me a photo.
Okay.
So I can see what kind of plants we're talking about here. So when you say that it started to, it started to lean against it, and then it kind of started to look like it, do you mean like leaf shape, or like how do you mean it like started to look like it?
So it's they're both like desert plants with like thorns, kind of like cactuses. One of them is like harder and more woody. The other one is like softer. It's more like a vine. So the one of the branches off the vine one was leaning on the woody one, and like the last few inches of that vine, it got like hard and woody like it, and it grew larger thorns like the plant it was leaning on, not small ones like the rest of itself.
So it could be a few things. It could just be the first thing I think of is that that part where the thorn's bigger and it's kind of harder and woodier, it could be that part is more mature than the softer part. So
that's what I was wondering, but it's like it's kind of an older plant. Like we've had it for over a year.
Well, that's not that old. Oh. That's not that old. So it could be yeah, it could be that it's older. I would say just if you really want me to diagnose what's going on, yeah, snap a pic and send it to me in an email, and I'm happy to like investigate further.
Sure.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anytime, if anyone ever has questions about your houseplants, and like, feel free to send me photos of them. I'm happy to help with that, anything with that. Yeah. Okay. All right. If anyone else has any questions, oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Happy to help. All
right. Have a good week. See you on Friday. No,
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yep. Yes. See you guys Thursday. Right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.